What's the largest item ever sold on eBay? That's the question for today's video. Absolute bona fide question to have, something you might be interested in. What is the largest item ever sold on eBay? That's what I'm going to get into on this video. I'm going to disclose this to you in the first few minutes. Got a few other things I want to drop at the same time just before I absolutely divulge that fabulous secret. I wanted to share a few other things. The largest item I've ever sold on eBay. Okay, what's the largest item I've ever sold on eBay? Absolutely massive item. Weighs a ton. Weighed a ton. I'm gonna disclose that as well. I've got a few photos of it. I'm also gonna do share a few sort of stats from my own eBay account. In fact, that's the reason I wanted to make this video. You know, when I made last week's video, we talked a little bit about jasonrathgaber.com, how we've got very little traffic, maybe 10 followers, 10, 15 people going to jasonrathgaber.com a week. It doesn't bring in any income. But I wanted to talk about, and then I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, well, don't forget about my eBay store, right? eBay sometimes comes up as a side hustle. Sometimes you read a Medium article, you watch a YouTube video, comes up as a side hustle, something you can do on the side something as it sort of comes up in certain lists of potential side hustles and ways to make money. And, it just occurred to me when I read those articles and like, wait a second, I've actually done all that. Okay, so that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk about some of my eBay store, some of the earnings, the successes I've had there, the largest item I've ever sold, and then the largest item ever sold on eBay. We're going to find out what that was. Just a quick point, if you're new to this channel or if you're it's the first time you've seen me speak and you just want to, I just want to reiterate what this channel is about. I'm going to upload every Saturday, okay, in 2025. That's sort of my goal. Where to come from? It sort of came from Justin Welsh, sort of a new, guy known on LinkedIn, right? Sort of famous on LinkedIn, has this newsletter, the Saturday Solopreneur. Once again, when he sent out this, when I sort of discovered him, I listened to a few of his, I don't think he's a big YouTuber. He's more of a LinkedIn guy. Sends out a weekly newsletter. And one thing that always impressed me about him was his consistency. I'll tell you, I've subscribed to a few YouTubers. I've listened to some podcasts. I've done some. This guy says he sends out his newsletter every Saturday, and I would tell you one thing. I think for the last year, he has never failed to arrive at Saturday 10 o'clock. I wake up, I read his newsletter, and I think that's the point of this YouTube channel from my perspective. Instead of consuming his content every Saturday, we're going to produce our own. We're going to record a YouTube video every Saturday for the year of 2025. That's 52 videos, and we're going to see what happens. That's the point, okay? My goal is to drive some traffic to some of the websites I have, jasonrathgaber.com, my mother's art website, my TriFinder, my triathlon store. That's one goal. I also want to sign up subscribers to the different socials I like. I love YouTube. I love Twitter. LinkedIn, not exactly the type of thing that I love, right? But at the same time, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to generate some traffic to some of these side hustles. And we're going to talk about the earnings, right? Most of these side hustles that I've tried don't appear to make any money, but it's also worth mentioning that we've tried some of these different financial side hustles like day trading, trading crypto, training machine learning models, and I guess ultimately this all segues into sort of a little bit more of a developer and a technology theme. As we develop these tools, as we use AI to develop these tools and write blogs, but also to create tools and create websites and create apps that people use. That's sort of my ambition, to use AI to generate this content, help me with these different mediums, and then ultimately sort of build some of the tools that I've always wanted to have. Okay, using AI for our benefit. That's the type of thing I'm interested in. And that was, that's sort of the inspiration for this channel. So that's the goal. That is the goal. Okay, let's move on to eBay. Okay, so I'm sort of, the point here is just to, as we talk about my different side hustles, as we talk about the different income that comes in, just wanted to remember, right? Almost forgot. I'm a long time eBayer, right? I've sold 318 items on eBay. Almost makes me need to sit back and just digest that. It is not a absolute, it's not the smallest amount, right? We got 145 positive feedbacks. I've got 2 neutral feedbacks in the past little while. We're not going to get into that type of thing. I don't think that's the point. But I think that one thing I wanted to say, 9 followers. It's kind of interesting, right? Like my eBay store is sort of quite successful. It's one of these algorithmically generated, generate one of these sort of algorithm type things. You list an item, right? People search for that, right? People search for Sony Handycam DVD. In the past, I listed these types of things, and they absolutely flew off the shelf, right? We've got some stuff that's a reasonable price. I mean, you're looking at the stuff that is not sold here, okay? But, the point is that it's a little bit like a YouTube video or a blog post or a something, you created product, right? In this case, it's old junk that you have around for your house. You list it. And the type of stuff that sells tends to be the type of stuff that's searchable, right? Tends to be the type of thing people want, right? And having done eBay for 3 years, I got a feel for what people want and what they don't. So I think I got this ready, my earnings tab. Money comes in from this. This is December 2024, okay? $234 of earnings, right? So we're not talking about nothing, right? So I wanted to make this video. I do not make nothing from my eBay store. I would say that every week I ship 1 or 2 items. If you take a look at some of the things I've sold in the month of December, right? Sweatpants, okay. Some interesting, old technology stuff. Kobo Aura HD e-reader, $58. Had 2 of them. Sold one for $50. Sold one for $63. This is stuff that you would normally throw out. And so, we sold old, xylophone from the old, that type of stuff, right? We sell jerseys. We sell stuff from around the house that is not used. And it brings in money. If I was to change this from last month to custom, okay, and I'm just going to put in, I'm going to go back in time and go to take a look, create a report here of 2024. We can see that in 2024 sold $1,898 on eBay. Total expenses $977, right? This just goes to show when you sell on eBay, there's 2 other people making money, right? And those people making the money are the eBay itself takes a percentage, right? And also the post office, right? Sometimes I sell these cheaper items and the post office, it's more in postage than the amount of the item, right? So, there were some items where the gross amount would be $5 and the expenses would be $15. It has absolutely happened. I'll do anything to unload this stuff. I do this stuff for 2 reasons. One is just to sell the junk in my house, right? And every time I sell something, there's just a little bit less stuff around here that is unneeded. Instead of going in the trash, it brings some money in. And it feels a bit like a side hustle. That's the type of thing that I'm interested in, right? It feels like a little bit of business. So even though, walking down to the post office and selling something for $5 might seem like a waste of time for a lot of people, right? But if you clicked on this video and you were thinking eBay, if you were thinking the largest item ever sold on eBay, if you wanted to, if you're just sort of interested in eBay in general, I think that, the point is that it's got interest. Every time somebody buys something, so every time somebody goes, and if you take a look at probably the most expensive item I sold last year, AAI Pommel Trading Pod, $427. When the pandemic rolled around, stuff started to. I launched this store during the pandemic, and it was fortuitous timing. It was the type of, look at that. Little Tikes IKEA bouncer. Someone paid $123 for that. Pretty impressive, right? Pretty, it's just surprising, right? So every time someone buys something, it's surprising. Obviously, the thing about eBay, though, is that it is not scalable, right? I'm going to run out of junk to sell. There's only, and it's a physical type of thing. Doing the listings is a little bit, it is not the easiest thing in the world. But ultimately, this is common in other, the thing about eBay, it costs nothing to get started, right? You don't have to pay a subscription. You don't have to pay any money up front. So the one thing I do think is that, every time I sell on eBay, I can't sort of lose, right? You cannot lose on eBay. You cannot spend more than you make, right? So every item that I sell, it's a type of guaranteed, profit, right? As opposed to maybe something like day trading, very easy to lose. Crypto, well, I'm going to get rich trading crypto. It's very easy to lose trading crypto. Same thing goes for potentially, YouTubing, right? We want to, it costs a little bit of money to get going on YouTube, right? Maybe you've got the equipment, camera, that sort of stuff already lying around. But as soon as you do one thing, you buy a light, you buy a new camera, you upgrade your PC, instantly you've sort of got an investment that it might be hard to recoup. Okay, let's move on. I wanted to talk a little bit about divulge secret number one, which is the largest item I've ever sold on eBay. It's also the most expensive. AAI pommel horse. Customer paid $1,000 for this. This does not do it justice just how big this item was, and I just wanted to show to the world. It was such an impressive feat to sell this pommel horse. To what ended up happening is we were on holidays at the time. I'm not going to say where we were on holidays, but we were on holidays, and we happened to be on holidays right during the Olympics. So this thing was on eBay for probably a year and a half, right? But when did it sell? What happened is during the Olympics, we were started to get messages about this item, right? There was a guy emailing me and said, I want to buy this pommel horse. I'm going to pay you $500 for it. And I was like, okay, I will sort of, I can't remember if I said I would sell it for $500 or what, or maybe it was a little bit more than that. But ultimately, I was negotiating via the messages to sell this item. And I was negotiating with this guy to how he was going to come pick it up. And he was talking to his boss, and he was talking to his lineman. And while these messages were going on, I'd agreed via the message feature to sell it to him. But I woke up the next morning, presto, item is sold. Somebody went on eBay onto my listing and lifted it for full price. And ultimately, the guy I was messaging with was gutted. He said, I thought we had a deal. I said, well, you never bought the item, right? You never clicked on it and purchased it. We weren't using the functionality of eBay to purchase this. So although we were messaging and blah, 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 that is not binding. Where when you purchase an item on eBay, it's a binding sale. Like every time somebody buys something from me on eBay, I feel 100% obligated to deliver it, to not negotiate it further. Many purchases, sometimes I'll list something on eBay, it sells 5 minutes later, right? I will take some time, 15, 20 minutes, list the item, take the photos, set the price, hit it, and then just seconds later someone buys it. And that can sometimes mean that I sort of mispriced the item, right? I've obviously sold this too cheap. But that's life. You know what I mean? It's not about winning every transaction. It's about, the thing I love about eBay, it's about having a little bit of, the taste of what it'd be like to have a business, right? I've got 10 followers, but it's about, satisfying customer demand. It's about tuning in to, getting a feel for what customers want and ultimately being honest about exactly what the item is, taking crystal clear pictures, right? Describing it accurately. And when they buy it, ship the item absolutely pronto. Most of the times people buy it, I just package it up right then and there and ship it. So I get a lot of positive feedback from my customers just for shipping instantly, because ultimately that's what I want. I list stuff that I want to ship. So in summary, $2,000 of earnings last year on eBay, put a lot of work to make $2,000, costed a lot of money, right? eBay is making the money passively. I'm doing the manual labor. I'm also giving away stuff that I paid more money for. So I love doing my eBay sales. But we need to move on to digital products. The point of this channel is that we want to move on to knowledge-based things. We want to create digital products which are saleable, which are scalable. We want to sell my expertise, right? One of my points of this channel is to offer my expertise and to start educating people and to share a bit of that knowledge and to one day sort of capitalize on it. So, okay, I wanted to share that. Let's move on to, I want to divulge, before we get too far, the largest item ever sold on eBay, okay? I used ChatGPT. The first thing I did was use ChatGPT. I said, what is the largest item ever sold on eBay? Apparently, according to ChatGPT, it's the Gulfstream II jet for $4.9 million in 2001. That might be right. I don't actually 100% believe that, okay? So I went on to Google and I got one of the second opinion. Second opinion came from America Online, of all places. And according to America Online, the biggest thing ever sold on eBay is the Giga Yacht. Sold for $168 million. Roman Abramovich, no less. Russian billionaire who owned Chelsea Football Club, the arch enemy of my club, Manchester United. 100 listed it. Yeah, because of $168 million. 400-foot yacht. So, they've got the Gulfstream II private jet sold for $4.9 million as number 2. Okay, so who do you believe? Yeah, Warren Buffett is number 3. Dinner with Warren Buffett. But these are the most expensive items, not the biggest one. But ultimately, I think the crown goes to the Giga Yacht. The crown goes to the Giga Yacht, folks. Biggest item ever sold on eBay. Thanks for listening that far. Okay, so if you came to find out what's the biggest item ever sold on eBay, you now know what is the largest item ever sold on eBay. I just want to continue, wind it down a little bit, okay, for the last few minutes. And I just want to touch on a few of the things that we spoke about last time, okay? That's how I see this channel going. That's how I see these YouTube videos upload. We're going to start with some sort of keyword, a searchable phrase, right? Something to get people interested. But I see the point from my perspective is a little bit different, right? It's to find my voice, find out what I want to talk about, find out what I want to divulge. And I just want to follow up on something we talked about yesterday, which is the S&P 500. Okay. So I don't know, the last week, I remember we were talking about, let's see if I can find that photo. Yeah, there it is. So last week we were taking a look at this chart of the S&P 500. I just thought I'd remind people, because that's the type of thing that we might want to do on this channel. Just keep our eye on. We're making some money from eBay, but at the same time, stock markets and charting the market absolutely counts, right? Keeping an eye on what's going on. Came up with this interesting chart where the S&P, 1 week ago, S&P was at the bottom of a channel. Could do one of two things, right? Is this going to bounce off the bottom of a channel, or is this channel absolutely irrelevant? It has nothing to do, or is it going to go down, right? So you had the perma-bear crowd forecasting, this is it. Stocks are going down, they're crashing. But you had Ron Walker, who I talked about last week, prominent YouTuber. I think I just got his YouTube channel sort of staged up. Let's see what we got. I'm not going to play the video, but, Ron Walker was talking about a bounce off of this trend line, right? So it was Ron that drew the trend line through the November low, touched on what happened in August with sort of the, it was a bit of a sell-off in August. You draw a line through those 2 points, and you use that to predict where things are likely to bounce, right? That becomes the bottom of the channel. The top of the channel, you do the same thing through the peaks, okay? And this is the type of thing that, not financial advice, for entertainment. But the reason people draw these trend lines and the reason people watch them is that, you can't, he predicted it ahead of time and then it happened. You know what I mean? What am I going to say about this? I mean, it's just a little bit more than absolute randomness, right? It had to bounce somewhere, and bingo, it bounced off there. So this sort of, I actually didn't watch his video this week just because I know what he's going to say, right? He's going to say, last week I drew this black line and that was my prediction, and it's absolutely in play. I think it was 3,400 or 6340 S&P. So I think just interesting, right? Last week we looked at it. We talked about the two possibilities without absolutely predicting one or the other was going to happen. You had the perma-bear YouTubers like their names. I was going to write them down so that I didn't have to Joe Bravo, Steve Van Meter. Steve, I haven't watched a Joe Bravo video in a while because it's always the same bearish. It's always the same, everything's going to end. I think we're going to try and take a look at it in a future video. Steve Van Meter, always predicting the end. Eurodollar University, always bearish, right? So you got this genre of always bearish YouTubers who are always predicting the end of the world, and for good reason, right? They're predicting the end of the world for very good reason. There is what are the good reason, right? U.S. debt, 35 trillion, absolute crisis coming. Okay, recession indicators, absolutely blaring red. We had the inverted yield curve. It's now not inverted. Unemployment has ticked up, right? So, the bear case is just well known. Trump, unpredictability with tariffs, right? the amount of good reasons to be bearish this market here and to be worried and to be conservative, absolutely abound. So for anyone who's continued to listen and segued from, eBay side hustle to just taking a look at stocks, be cautious, right? But at the same time, what Ron Walker does, that a couple other guys, Ron Walker, John Howell, what they do that not everybody does is they're able to go against the trend, right? Go against the narrative, and be a little bit more in sync with what the market is actually doing, as opposed to sort of the fundamentals. The fundamentals are bearish. Stocks are super expensive. We just made a list of 6 reasons to be bearish and to be worried. John Howell and Ron Walker are good at going against the narrative and sometimes, coming up with good predictions. Okay. We talked about eBay. We talked about the biggest item I've ever sold. We reviewed my numbers. We saw the biggest item ever sold on eBay, the Giga Yacht. That's what we want to get to, right? That's the point here. Hopefully one day these pennies that we're dealing with are going to turn into the Giga Yacht. Let's just touch on 2 quick updates, okay? And then I think it's mission accomplished. It's mission accomplished. Jason Rathgaber blog, okay? By the way, if you want to take a look at that chart that I showed, it's going to be here on my blog. Will stocks crash in 2025? I'm going to be tuning that up, okay? The jasonrathgaber.com blog is going to be created with AI, right? These are AI written blogs, but then I'm going to edit them and moderate them, and as I have time, tune them into my own way of thinking, right? So, I think that that's the game plan here. I love the look of these jasonrathgaber.com blogs. It's very time consuming. I don't have time to sit around blogging and writing big papers all the time. That's why I see AI happening, right? So my YouTube channel is going to be me talking honestly, 100% authentic, no editing, no makeup. JasonRathgaber.com is going to be written by AI on the other hand. But there'll be pictures and, I think that list of bearish, I want to make sure that list of bearish reasons or why the stocks might crash in 2025 is going to be in there. That picture that I made is going to be in there. AI and ChatGPT help me fill it out and turn it into a blog, okay? My Medium, on the other hand, is something I'm going to talk about on this channel. And you don't want to upload AI to Medium. It's banned on Medium. And there, if I have time to write something absolutely original and out of my own head, we're going to do that on Medium, okay? By the way, subscribe. I anticipate putting a link at the bottom. Subscribe to my newsletter, okay? So if you want links to some of these resources that I've talked about, the chart, the list of reasons things are going to crash. I'm not going to put my eBay. Am I going to put my eBay store in the newsletter? I might this one time. And generally, I'm not trying to drive traffic to my eBay store. Okay. That's not the point of this channel. I wanted to share the eBay update just so that I could share some good news, show that something I've tried has generated some side hustle income. But at the same time, I don't expect people on this channel to buy my used shoes on eBay. That's not what I want. What do I want from you guys? I do want you to subscribe to the newsletter, okay? I want to get emails of people that are interested in side hustles, interested in finance, interested in technology, interested in AI. Start subscribing to my newsletter so that I've got them, and then I'm going to keep you updated. So subscribe to the newsletter. And then I will send you links to these different resources. And then actually every week, my game plan is to send out the newsletter every week. So if you don't have time to watch the video or to hear all of this stuff, you can just get the newsletter and keep abreast of it. Last but not least, let's just touch on our art website, the Green Horse Studio. My mother's art website. Something spoke to my mom earlier in the week. Okay, we're absolutely looking for people willing to take a punt on, the type of thing I do, right? I develop websites. That's what I do, right? Like other guys that I follow on YouTube, Jackie Chu or Income Stream Surfers, or who knows who. I've got a variety of different websites, jasonrathgaber.com, the triathlon one. We've got this art website that I did for my mom. One thing we're adding is the member functionality, right? So we've got the sign-in page now as part of Squarespace. This is a Squarespace developed website. So I do websites in different tools, right? jr.com is written in raw HTML of all things, but TriFinder is WordPress. The Green Horse Studio is Squarespace. I'll tell you, it's been interesting just to be able to say, not only can I make a website, but I can use these different technologies. These are the types of things I know about. What's the difference between WordSpace and WordPress and Squarespace? And what we've added here into the shop is the membership. You can now purchase a membership, right? So you can purchase a membership to the Green Horse Studio, $2 a month. Let's click sign up and see what happens. You're going to put in your name. You're going to make a password, create an account. It'll cost $2. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move all of the images from the main page into the member area. And then we're going to bring the sign up onto the front page, right? So if you want to see the photos, you have to sign up. If you want to see her art, right? So we're going to try and adopt this. I think that's the future of the internet, right? Without sort of mentioning other famous, inappropriate, websites. The name of the game for small content creators. For content creators, small, large, medium, doing different things, whether you're an artist, whether you're a writer, a programmer. The idea is that is to stop giving away for free your content and to collect a small but significant list of consumers, of members, of what's the word I'm looking for? Subscribers who want to, who I think we've all got the ability to, I think everybody probably who listened this far. If you listen this far, my guess is you're the type of person who's willing to support a small content creator. And for $2 or $3, willing to, not give $2 or $3 to everybody that asks, right? To every website, but to support, maybe up to 10, right? To support a few smaller creators. We all subscribe to Netflix and we pay $20 a month, but we're turning Netflix into the richest, biggest. We're just giving money to billionaires, right? Every time we pay $10 a month for ESPN, we are giving some of our money to baseball players who are making $750 million, right? You can't give $2 to someone who that's the only $2 they're getting. They're not really making money other ways, right? So I think one thing we want to do is we want to spread a little bit of our spend to the smallest creators and support them, right? If we want to expect that back from other people, we got to be willing to give. And we want to stop spending our money on Netflix, on ESPN, going to Taylor Swift concerts. We want to stop making the richest people even richer and spread it around a little bit to people who are trying. So my mother, the Green Horse Studio, has got people that go to it, right? People like her posts on Facebook and on different types of social media. And we're going to try and rework this website to capitalize on the Squarespace member site functionality, which Squarespace had recently. So we would love your support. And as we build this out, we'll have an episode where we go in detail on how to do that on Squarespace, what the pros and cons are, and how it's working out for us. I think we did it. Thanks for making it all this way. 100% appreciated from my side, and I'll be back next Saturday.